Good Thursday evening, and welcome to This and That, the podcast. I'm your host, Joe Gilloway, along with my co-host, Mr. William Bostic. What is that, Bill?
That was a symbol.
Is that your best ginger baker? Okay. And this is episode, you know what episode it is, Bill?
11.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Yeah, episode 11 of This and That, the podcast. And it's going to be one of our, I don't want to call it housekeeping because it's more or better than housekeeping, but we have two different guests, and they're going to come on the second and third segments. And then the first segment will be kind of like housekeeping stuff, but it's going to be stuff that's we know is important to the people in this area, the Lower Paxton or Greater Lower Paxton area, because it has to do with government. It has to do with Lower Paxton Township government. And so we're not going to waste too much time here. Let's start with our disclaimer, Bill. This gets us out of stuff if we slip up and say the wrong things, which
I don't have a lawyer yet, so we better do
me neither. So anyway, the views and opinions expressed on this show are those of the participants who state them and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or positions held by This and That, the podcast, as an entity, Bill or myself, or the sponsors who support the show. Okay.
Did you write that, Joe?
I did, Bill.
Oh my gosh, you could be a lawyer.
I don't know about that. That was like one sentence, but yeah, it kind of covers our butt. But we're not trying to insult anybody or. But anyway, that's what we do. Let's go into our sponsors now, and they are the American Legion Post 272 on Mountain Road, Rickabaz Electric, Team PA, AAU Basketball, and Be a Hero, Hire a Hero. Thanks to those great local businesses for their continued support. We really appreciate it. How about upcoming on This and That, the podcast? We don't have anything scheduled in the immediate future, Bill. Okay. I did schedule three more of the Central Dauphin School District board members. We're going to have Lauren Silvers, Janelle Bingaman, and David Dorneman joining us, but that's not until the middle of August. Okay. But
what? Something's happened to me this week you could take a look at. Okay. I got reunited with Central Dauphin Rams football coach Glenn McNamee. First time in 6 years I've talked to him. I tell you what, CD has a great coach, great human being in Coach Mac. Mm-hmm. I almost lost $30,000 in a scam. I was involved in a rat hunt. I have a friend who has an infestation of rats, and the story behind that. Making some progress with Linglestown Gazette and trying to get a crew of correspondents. And last but not least, I have a new assistant that I want to introduce to the public at some point.
Okay. All right.
Lots of stuff happening.
That sounds good to me. And on our sister, or I guess my sister podcast, this is a big deal. And I think that a lot of the people that watch this show have been supporting Linglestown Gazette Sports over the years. But we are going to have on 9 of these girls, 9 of the 16 state champion Central Dauphin softball team. There they are, and that's going to be this coming Tuesday, the 24th, on the Linglestown Gazette Sports page.
All right.
And before we get into our little first segment, this is who we have coming on tonight. We have Bill. You want to introduce the first guest, and I'll introduce the second one, or just tell them who we got so they stick around.
Yeah, our first guest is Lower Paxton Township Deputy Fire Chief Brett Graham. A lot of people have been asking to hear from him because he didn't like our guests previously. So we have the man on tonight. Let's put it that way.
So if we have the wrong guests on, we just try to make it up to the viewers and bring the right ones on then, right?
Yeah.
Is that the way that works?
We just argue for who we brought on, legitimize it.
All right. And then after Mr. Graham will be John Herr, friend of mine for, literally 53 years. We met in first grade, and he's a stand-up comedian, but he's done some very, very interesting things over the years. He's a Central Dauphin grad. He's a Penn State grad, and he's been a speechwriter for a lot of different, I'd say, very important people. So, that's going to be interesting. Both of our guests are going to be pretty darn interesting. And I am sourcing, this is the last thing that I'm going to say before we start getting into our first. I'm sourcing Bruce Bond.
Okay.
I'm trying to get Bruce to come on. He told me, kind of gave me a pretty hard no today. So, but I'm going to let him go here for now, but I'd love to have him on the show.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just a huge fan. I mean, I haven't seen him. He hasn't done anything that I've seen in quite a while.
But WTPA, right? He's our Wink
No,
104.
It was a Wink 104.
Okay.
Yeah. He won a Marconi Award, which is a national award. It's like an Emmy or an Oscar.
Right.
Yeah. So, but he was very, very instrumental in those years in my life. I listened to him like 5 days a week and just. So anyway, I don't know what's going to happen there. He did give me a kind of a hard no. Who are you sourcing, Bill?
At this point, I'm trying to get by day with my new employment.
Okay.
My granddaughter.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a day-by-day affair.
All right. So anyway, let's jump into this, Bill. At issue here is the public's desire to be made aware of the terms of Lower Paxton Township Manager Brad Gottschall's would be or could be buyout or severance package.
Right.
Whenever he resigned, I guess I should have started with that. Mr. Gottschall resigned.
That broke on Tuesday night.
Yeah,
and then
I think you broke it. I think it came out.
I broke the story.
Yeah,
and then Penn Live came in behind me with having interviewed Brad and got some. So it was a good follow-up article they did for sure.
Okay. The legal term for this buyout is separation and release agreement, which is a legal contract between an employer and an employee. Typically, the employer offers some form of consideration like severance pay, extended benefits, or a positive reference in return for the employee's agreement to waive certain rights, including the right to sue the employer, etc. But he's sticking around, right?
Yeah, what wasn't known right away on Tuesday night, there was a consultancy agreement without naming any names, and it turns out it is for Brad to come back and fill in, do certain things as the township's looking for a new manager. So a lot of the executives at the township have left. Their administrative staff has been depleted, and I think they just. My guess is they said we're going to need his help until we get someone new in here. That's my guess.
Well, that's a professional move on his part to stick around. I'm sure he didn't have to. I would just say stick around. I may have some help in getting some of the details within the next 24 hours, and beyond that, Penn Live has requested copies of all that stuff. I have information from a professional organization that those agreements. For severance and then the consultancy are public records. It's just a matter of going through the procedures to get them. So, and I might be able to get some information before that. So we'll see. Yeah. So the information on local government separation agreements. They say that the information you got is that they are public documents.
Right. But
Pennsylvania open records laws allows townships to require the public to file right to know forms. Okay. Right. So it's not like a real kind of easy process. You don't just show up at the township building and they hand you.
Well, the thing is, there's reasons why they don't want to put that out there, be it political, be it otherwise. I mean, so they can stall it. And that's what's happening here by requesting right to know and going through that whole process. So they do not want to put it out there right now, Joe, clearly.
The municipality, in this case, Lower Paxton Township, has 30 days to respond to the right to know request. Then it's not uncommon for the municipality to present a reason which would deny access to the requested information, forcing the applicant to appeal to a state agency, which hears appeals of open record disputes. So
it happens all the time.
This could turn into legal ping pong, correct?
Yep. Unless we get a source or someone is able to provide some information outside of all that, we'll see what happens.
Okay. So you're going to try to stay on that as much as you can, right?
I am, absolutely, because we're talking about tax dollars and we need to know how those tax dollars are being used and maybe some of the rationale for what they're doing here. So we'll keep on it.
I mean, it's not uncommon for a person in a job of that stature, that magnitude, to have a buyout. Okay. So, I mean, if some of the people that are upset about it, if they were in Mr. Gottschall's shoes and they went to school like he did and had, important jobs, high paying jobs, they probably would want a severance package too. I know I'm struggling to get this out.
Well,
My sister sold pharmaceuticals for years. A company came in and bought hers out. They gave her a big severance package. I know this is government and it's public rather than private, but that's just the way things go in a lot of cases. I don't resent.
Yeah, it's pretty simple in that whoever, somehow, some way, they came to the conclusion that Brad was going to leave, whether it was on his own or otherwise. Who knows?
Right.
But they got together, the supervisors and Brad, and they figured it out.
Right.
We just don't know as the public just what they figured out at this point.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. All right. I think we were able to explain that well enough that if somebody didn't know anything about it, now they know a little more about it. And then let's just talk about this before we bring in Brett Graham. Tonight, like right now, the township meeting just started. They're going to kind of sift through all the candidates and narrow it down, right? Is it just the Republicans who are doing that? Or?
Yeah, it's just the Lower Paxton Township Republican Committee. Okay. So they have to endorse 2 candidates to actually put them on the ballot, because these 2 seats were opened up. The resignations happened too late to be on the primary. So the process is, if we don't have a primary election, you let the local committees do it. I don't know when the Democrats are going to meet. In Lower Paxton Township, I don't even think the Democrats are organized. They kicked that up to the Dauphin County Democratic Committee. So at some point, they'll have 2 candidates endorsed or designated to go on the ballot as well. And in our case, there's 3 people that are meeting with the Republicans tonight. That's Lower Paxton Township Interim Supervisor John Jeem, and then also Interim Supervisor Jill Vecchio. Those are the 2. And then just within the last few days, John Packer, a retired state police officer, had run a pizza shop in Lingelstown, who's been very, very involved with the firefighter program, trying to push that through. He decided to throw his name in the ring. So John Packer is also involved tonight. Those are the 3. 2 of them will get on the ballot. One will walk away empty-handed.
Yeah, Mr. Packer, I know him, and he's not a politician by nature at all. No. He cares about his community, and that's really what kind of nudged him in, or helped him to make the decision to get involved. So the other thing is, Bill, I have a question.
Sure.
Why does Pamela Thompson sit with an empty seat in between her and the other 4?
No, you're asking me to be a psychologist or psychiatrist to figure out what's going on in Pamela's mind. What are you doing here? Here's my thought. My only thought on this is that this is the seat that Pamela here on the right has been using probably from day one.
Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense then.
So she likes that seat.
All right.
Then she's going to stick with it.
All right. And the reason I ask is because I wondered that myself. And then I had coffee yesterday morning with a good friend of mine. And he asked me, he's like, what's up? What's the deal with Pamela Thompson? I go, you know what? I was wondering that myself. But if that's the seat she has sat in for a long time, then.
Well, there's another angle to that. She's the only Democrat, so she feels like she needs to be separated.
Well, I wouldn't want that to be the case. If I was just as a community member and a taxpayer, I think we.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So, anything else, Bill? Before we bring in,
we got to get moving. I think our guests are ready to go.
Okay, let's bring in Mr. Brett Graham. There he is.
Hey, good to have you on, Brett.
Lower Paxton Township Deputy Fire Chief. When we say Lower Paxton Township, and I'm only going to ask one question. I'm going to let Bill take it. That means you kind of oversee all 3 companies, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. There are 3 companies: Colonial Park, Paxtonia, and Lingelstown, and you oversee all 3 of them. Okay, Bill, why don't you jump in because you know more about this than I.
We'll see. Brett's going to help us out here. Yeah, you've certainly been a steady voice whenever you've been in the township meetings and talked. And you and your Adam Koshiba, I thought you've done a great job in presenting things to the public. And but before we get into all that, I wanted to find out a little bit about your background. So, how did you get into a position? I guess a couple years ago, whenever you were hired to be in a position to be a deputy fire chief in a large municipality.
Sure. Yeah. So I've started my fire service career about 25 years ago as a junior firefighter in Lancaster County. That's where I hail from. So I spent the first 12 years of my fire service career being a volunteer, just like we have here in the township.
Now, what is a junior firefighter? So maybe there's somebody watching that may be interested.
Anybody that's under the age of 18,
Okay.
Child labor laws, things like that. You're not
Right.
really permitted to do certain things. And we have a number of those here in the township as well. But it gets you involved, it's a great opportunity to get the kids off the street.
Absolutely.
Give them something productive to do.
Yep.
And they learn a very important trade while they're at it. So I volunteered for 12 years. And then in 2012, it's somewhere 2012 time frame, I was hired on as a career firefighter in York County.
Okay. Where at in York County?
I worked for York Area United Fire and Rescue. So they cover Springersbury, Spring Garden, and Manchester townships.
Okay.
So I started there as a fireman and worked up through the ranks through captain, battalion chief. So as a shift chief, oversaw the training program, and each of us had an ancillary duty that administrative duty. We were a smaller department, so I oversaw the training and things like that, and managed a shift of 16 firefighters covering the 3 municipalities.
And this was on a professional level now at this point, right?
Correct. Yeah, that was a paid position. So
okay,
they're a combination department. They have full-time career staff in each one of their 5 fire stations, but they also have some volunteer fire police and some firefighters that augment there. And when the opportunity came up for the position here in Lower Paxton, it was something that it looked appealing. I like being in the ground level of things. It looked like an opportunity to expand my horizons and take on a new challenge. And so I went through the process, and lucky, I had the opportunity to be chosen, and I've been here for 2.5 years now.
Okay. Now, when you arrived on the scene, I don't know, and probably most of the public doesn't know what was driving that process for the township to bring on a deputy chief. What was happening that was driving that process?
Yeah, so my understanding is, historically, there's always been a public safety director who, in large part, manages the police department, and acted as a liaison to the volunteer fire companies. The township over the years has made a great investment in the fire companies, in that all of the frontline apparatus, starting late 80s, early 90s, the township started purchasing the fire trucks for the fire companies. Right. Currently, we as in the township own 9 pieces, the 9 frontline pieces of apparatus. So essentially an engine, rescue, and ladder truck in each of the 3 fire companies. And the township also makes a considerable investment in the way of an allotment every year to the 3 fire companies to help them operate. Okay. I think when Director Kashiba came on board, Director Kashiba has a tremendous background in public safety. He was a paramedic at one point. He retired from the state police. He was a volunteer fire chief for decades. So he ended up having a little more involvement in the fire companies, and and just trying to bring them together so that they weren't operating in 3 separate silos, and kind of more efficient operation. But that's quite an undertaking for one individual to oversee, those, the police, the fire, being a liaison to EMS. And I think there was just some incidences of, that where that silo effect between the 3 fire companies became very apparent, and they needed to bring somebody in, or they did this, they decided they were going to do the study to take a look at emergency services here in the township.
And excuse me, Brett, that's the Municipal Resources Incorporated study. Is that the one you're referring to? It was mentioned throughout the deliberations here recently.
Yeah, correct. So they put an RFP out for the study. Municipal Resources was awarded that in 2022, and they started that process. And as a part of that, it was recommended to bring, my position on to
Okay.
kind of oversee the operations of things and, implement the recommendations that came out of that study.
Okay. And what happened in 2024 that ultimately the fire tax was increased and the township was funding 10 professional firefighters? What prompted all that?
So when I'm back up, so I came on board January of 23. And, just like anybody else that comes into a role like this, I took some time initially just to really figure out kind of the history and how we've gotten to where we are, how we're operating, those sorts of things. And a couple months in, it became apparent that there were some gaps that, we needed to take a look at and fill. And a lot of what I was doing too was looking at the study was officially released a couple months after I got here, but taking a look at the study and what their recommendations were versus what I was seeing based on my, experience and stuff, we started kind of putting the pieces together. This whole thing about performance gaps and stuff like that, there's a lot of national standards that drive, how we should be operating and what the best practice benchmarks are. The ISO study's been talked about on here.
Let me ask you, when you say performance gaps, are you talking about scenarios that were mentioned throughout the meetings where a fire station isn't manned enough to even take a truck out of there? Is that a performance gap?
Yeah, I would. So what I call a performance gap is maybe we responded with less than the minimum manning on it. So we were understaffed or we were extremely delayed in responding or we were out of service altogether. So we weren't meeting the benchmarks or the goals and objectives that, we were striving to hit. So to me, that would, be, classified as a performance gap.
Okay. So yeah, go ahead.
We started looking at that information and we started, trying to figure out how we can bolster recruitment and retention of the volunteers and, really incentivize the volunteers to increase participation. Before I got here, the 3 fire companies had actually gone together and got a federal grant for recruitment and retention. And they put a program together that expired about the same time that I got here. The funds for that, where they were paying people to respond to calls, a nominal fee. But what we learned through that and through their data was that that program didn't do much to bring new people in or really increase participation. It was more of a nice thank you to the folks that have already been doing what they're doing. Okay.
All right.
And I think it's worthwhile saying that most of our volunteers don't do this for compensation.
Right.
And it actually became evident. It's evident in our current stipend program that, they're not doing this for the money. So the money really isn't changing the circumstances a whole lot. So, but yeah, so as we work, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So there may be a firefighter or two that, maybe their family situation, working with their wife or whatever, that stipend really helps them out. But for the most part, you're saying it doesn't have a major impact.
It's not like gas money to me. I mean, it's not, with respect to the stipend, it's not going to pay many bills or a whole bill, right?
So the original stipend through the federal grant was, you got, pennies on the dollar for a response. Right. So what we did was, and I like to think that we marketed ours well, but it was kind of born out of a couple other programs here in the Commonwealth that were doing well. One of them being Upper Marion. You heard about that before. Mm-hmm. But we decided that, it was important for us to have staffing in the fire stations. Lower Paxton Township is a very dense area. We have, according to the 2020 census, 1,900 people per square mile, which, anything greater than 1,000 square or 1,000 people per square mile is considered urban density. So, we clearly meet that definition. And you see the traffic that, we deal with as we traverse the township here. So our responders are dealing with those same challenges trying to get to the fire station when there's an emergency, things like that. So when we kind of set our benchmarks and we were looking at those things, we knew that we were going to need to get people in the fire stations so that we, had a reasonable response to somebody's emergency.
Can I jump in for a second here?
Sure.
Okay. I was I guess it was 2 board meetings ago. Bill and I were there together, and you were up. They brought you up and put you on the dais, and you really said some smart, bright things about what's going on, the needs of the for paid firefighters, and I don't know if you went so far as to tell everybody exactly where we are with all this. I'm not trying to get you to be political here at all, just so you know. But that
I don't fit that bill very good, so I'm glad.
Okay. All right. Really, I'm not going to do that. However, I think a lot of the community wants to know. I know that they do because I live in the community. I live in Colonial Park, and I talk to people. I think that money was approved to hire, at the time it was 10 firefighters. I've heard it bantied around maybe 12, but let's say it's 10 or 12. Where are we at with that? I mean, how come we had a supervisor last week that was kind of balking a little bit? We had a member of the community come up, a longtime member of the community, and kind of pushing for keep things staying, status quo and just having volunteers. He felt bad for the volunteers. It seemed like they're getting swept away or swept under the rug, which I don't think is happening. But where are we at with all this? Are you guys still in the midst of trying to find these, let's just say 10 paid firefighters?
Yeah. So, I mean, I know we're on a time thing, so I won't go through all the bore you with all the details, even though I'm sure people have those questions. But we tried to implement a stipend program, really, our volunteers can make up to $1,000 a month pre-tax.
Okay, that's way more than, I don't mean to interrupt, that's way more than gas money. Okay.
Yeah.
I just made that comment a few minutes ago that I thought it was like gas money. That's way more than gas money.
Yeah. So we really tried to, and as of today, currently we have, varying levels of participation, but we have about 12 active firefighters at Colonial Park, 10 at Paxton, and about 18 at Linglestown. To work with. And those folks are tired, and we're seeing it in the numbers. I can see it in the graphs and the data. Currently as it stands, we're only hitting about 40 some odd percent of coverage in the stipend program. Now I just want to set the stage for the career staff. That number of stipend, the stipend numbers isn't the only thing driving the need for career staff, because there are times, we do have some home response yet. But that's a delayed response. It's still a response. And that number isn't necessarily calculated in the stipend program. But when you look at the stipend program numbers, and then you look at, every morning and every evening, we do a check-in with the officers as to what staffing is. And, as recent as yesterday, Paxtonia was out of service most of the day, and we were short-staffed in another station. And when we do that, and we know this information, and I don't mean to just pick on Paxtonia, because it actually it kind of ebbs and flows around all 3 of the fire stations. None of them are immune from being out of service or having a unit out of service or being understaffed. But our mutual aid is in the same boat. So when we know we're short, we're letting Susquehanna Township and Swedera Township and West Hanover know, hey, we're short. And we're trying to move people around. And most of the times when we're letting, these other municipalities know we're short, they're short as well. So it's kind of been a regional effort in a way, kind of unofficially, to make sure that, our communities are protected. So we kind of got to the point where how do we guarantee that we have staffing? And that's where the conversation of career staff came from, because truly the only way that we can guarantee a response is to know that we have people in the fire stations or pay people to be in our fire stations. So the reason that it's, we did 10 to start with day side, and there was a lot of conversations leading up to that. If you read the study says Monday to Friday, daytime staffing. Well, some of our busiest days and some of the days where I look at that we're out of service are weekends. So some days we're better, during the day on a weekday than we are during the day on a Saturday or a Sunday. So only having career staff Monday to Friday wasn't going to fix the challenge. So that's where 7 days a week came in. I still believe that while we do have some gaps in the evening times or overnights, the majority of those gaps are during the day. So we need to kind of tackle that first. And part of that was being fiscally responsible. So I'm coming into the board of supervisors, putting a presentation on saying we need to hire 10 people. If we were going to do 24-hour coverage right off the bat, the number would be higher than that. There would be a bigger implication financially. So I think that, it's my job and my boss, the director's job, to make sure that while we're addressing these gaps, we're also being fiscally responsible, and we're, making the best of what we have to, do our jobs, but also, not make it more difficult for people in the community to pay their bills. So
yeah, the one thing I noticed at the last meeting you were there, and the announcement was made that we were moving forward with this program, was there was a lot of volunteers off to my right, and they were directly asked whether they wanted this thing, and I didn't see anyone shake their head no. I mean, it seems like the volunteers are right on board with this, and it also seems like I got the impression from May 13th that those three fire companies were working very well together.
So that has really, I think, been the most important part of my job, has been to get the leadership of the fire companies and just the fire companies as a whole working together and embracing kind of they all have a very storied tradition in, their identity and the history of the fire companies and all that. But we're not trying to erase that in any way, shape, or form. In fact, we want to embrace that, but also kind of the new brand of the Bureau of Fire and the new emblem that you guys use there that's on my shirt. You'll notice that the volunteers wear both patches. They wear their company patch and they wear the township patch on their shoulders. And I think that, you see that in a lot of fire departments, right? You look at the fire department of New York, they have the department patch, and then all the companies have a patch because they have that pride. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get everybody to be a single team and work together. And, we're not looking to consolidate the three fire companies. They're their own independent organizations, but we want them operationally working under, one umbrella and be, have that operational consistency.
I think it's and it showed through, I think, especially on May 13th. I watched that whole meeting over the course of about a week because it was so long. But I think I saw that. Now, I have just a couple of quick things before.
Okay, there we go.
I would say ambitious readers who takes time to look into all this stuff. I may mention that it seemed to me like Lingelstown, and you pointed it out, that they have a little bit more staff than some of the other two. But he pointed out that basically he was looking at this Municipal Resources Incorporated study, and he thought he interpreted the fact that Lingelstown may have more, but sometimes the response time is slower than the other two fire companies, Paxtonia and Colonial Park. Can you address that, since this is something coming from a reader that I certainly could not address?
Sure. I mean, when I first got here, I want to give a shout out to our volunteers. Okay. When I first got here, I'm a numbers guy. I like data. I think that I have my education is in leadership and strategic, organizational management. So data is important to me. And I think that, when we're making decisions and spending taxpayer money, we need to be able to back that up. When I first got here, the average response times, or, from dispatch to turnout times, at Colonial Park was 3 minutes when I got here. They're now at a minute and a half.
Wow.
So we've shaved considerable time off. Paxtonia, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. It's now 2 minutes and 21 seconds. So we shaved considerable time off. Lingelstown was 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Today it's 3 minutes and 55 seconds. So I think all three of them have done a tremendous job of reaching for those benchmarks, and we've made huge improvements, but I think we still have room to go. And I think that, when you call 911 or anybody in the community calls 911, they want somebody there as fast as possible. And I think it's, incumbent upon us to make sure that occurs. But yes, so as you just heard, Linglestown does have a longer average turnout time. And that comes from historically have really embraced the home response model. And if there is if there is a part of this township that is still achievable, it is the Linglestown area. When you look at Colonial Park and Paxtonia and having to cross 22 and the traffic density in the southern part of the township is a lot greater than Linglestown, but Linglestown Road isn't getting any better. And, it does show a little bit in their turnout times. Now, what has driven theirs down is they have, they have really embraced the stipend program as well. And there are many nights and many days when they have people in station. So
I see that driving by. I live in Linglestown. Just quickly moving over to,
I'm sorry.
Can we just move? I wanted to move over quickly to bringing on these new firefighters. You had mentioned at the last meeting you were there that you're looking sometime in August, and just wanted to see if you would give us an update, what you think timing wise, as far as getting the professionals in here.
Yeah. So we finished up interviews yesterday, actually. So we interviewed 15 of the 15 candidates. So they're complete. They've all been ranked. Hoping tomorrow to have their packets over to the director so they can be assigned out to a detective for their background screening. So they'll have a comprehensive background check done. We are still waiting on the consultant to come back. PFM was contracted to do the salary benefits package. I know there's been a lot of discussion about that, and there was a lot of work done for the budget between the director, myself, the finance director, Sam Miller, and we had what I thought was a good compensation benefits package. But and that's what drove the budget. But decision was made earlier this year to kind of give that a second look. So we're working on that currently. I've been in contact with PFM, and they're moving the balls rolling. And I've been assured that by the time backgrounds are done by the end of July timeframe, that study should be done as well. So I'm hoping that we get the conditional offers out, start getting some equipment ordered and whatnot that we need for the firefighters. My hope is that they start their initial onboarding training in late August, early September. That's my goal.
It's good to hear. And the last thing I want to check with you on, the comment I made at that meeting, this last one, was about recruiting, continuing to bring in volunteers. Just update the public on some of the steps you're taking initially to get that ball rolling, Brett.
Yeah, so we every year the three fire companies and the Bureau get a state grant, and what I used that for this year was for recruitment and retention and marketing for the Bureau and the three fire companies. So I'm sure you've seen the Bureau Fire Facebook page has been a little more active here lately. So we have a marketing firm that is managing that along with Instagram and YouTube. They're also in the process of building a Facebook or a website for the Bureau of Fire that links to the three fire company websites. We also have all of our applications for the volunteers, and when we did the career staff, are done electronically now. You've probably seen the QR code flying around, but it helps us to track kind of where those applications come from and be able to spread the word a little further. But the goal with that whole process is to, again, kind of cast a wider net and hopefully get our name out there and excite people to what we're doing, and hopefully increase our recruitment efforts.
I marked down a thing for me to do is to join those pages. So and start linking to some of your things, Brett. Anything else? Yep. Anything else from you, Joe?
No, I just wanted to say thank you very much. Yep. I mean, I'm a Lower Paxtonian specifically. I live in Colonial Park, and knowing that you are on our fire staff, I feel good about that. I was impressed. That. Yeah, and I mean this, and this is the thing I wanted to say more than anything else. I mean, when I first saw you a couple of weeks ago, I was like, wow, that guy's impressive. He's a professional, and I'm glad that my township has him. Yeah. And so moving forward, don't go anywhere, Brett. We need you around.
Yeah.
we really do.
I can't take all the credit. For one, I have my boss in the director, Kashiba, is an amazing individual, and he's I appreciate the township giving me this opportunity. But the volunteers that I work with day in and day out are incredible as well. I feel like my job is kind of and I don't want to sound like a politician here, but my job is kind of to set the expectations and the strategic vision. Mm-hmm. But I believe in delegation, and we have a committee that handles training. So we have members of each of the fire companies that work together to come up with township-wide policies and procedures. And this is a team effort. These guys are working hard. The data that I shared with you, that's not me, that's them. Again, we kind of set the bar, and some people say I set it probably a little too high, but I think we all know that when you set a goal and set it high, if we fall short, we're still doing better than we were. So
right, absolutely.
The goal isn't and even with the career staff, I have to say, and I said this at the meeting the other day, our volunteers aren't failing the community. They've done a tremendous job, and they're going to continue to do a tremendous job. It's just our call volume is just continuing to grow. We're at 866 calls already this year. That's more than some departments run in 2 years worth of time. 21% of the time we have multiple calls going on at the same time. The other day we had 4 calls going at the exact same time, and we handled all of them. There's days where we can't do that, where we would have to have mutual aid coming in, and these guys do a tremendous job. So we're looking to help them. We're looking to respect their traditions, and we're looking to support them, not replace them. And I don't want anybody to think that our fire companies are failing the community. It's just the opposite, but they're stretched thin and we have to help them. Right. So that's where we're at.
Lower Paxton Township Deputy Fire Chief Brett Graham, thank you so much.
Yeah.
If there's something that you want to get back out to the community at any time, reach back out to Bill and me, and you're always welcome to come on. Or if we have any more questions, we'll bring you back in if that's okay with you. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah. I just want to officially invite you for a cup of coffee at St. Thomas Roasters, the capital of coffee here in the Harrisburg region, just to brainstorm the recruiting part and how Lingostown Gazette can help you out. That's one thing I'd like to do at some point in the near future, Brett.
Bill likes to be seen with important people in public.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, a little photo op, all that kind of stuff.
I don't know if I'm important, but I like to drink coffee,
though, right? So. Okay, there we go.
Let me know when you're available, and I'll make it a point to meet you there.
Okay, we'll do.
Appreciate you, Brett. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
You too.
All right, that's Deputy Fire Chief, Lower Paxton Township Deputy Fire Chief Brett Graham. What a great guest! What a great guy! And here he is. Wake up, John. Were you able to watch that?
Sure, of course.
Pretty impressive guy. I want him in my fire department.
I was wondering who the best cook is at that fire department.
I guess every department or every company, I guess, is they have that guy, right? That they lean on to cook all the best meals.
Hey, John, do you like chicken barbecue?
Well, I don't get to many of them because I'm usually doing comedy in DC or somewhere. But sure, I want to go to one of those Lingostown barbecues. Maybe this year. Maybe
you better introduce John. He just sort of popped in there.
Let me introduce John. John Herr, aka for the sake of some of the things we're going to be talking about tonight, which is stand-up comedy, aka Herricane. That's Herricane, nickname Herricane. And I've known John for many years, since first grade. And but your story, at least your professional story, your adult story, you went to Central Dauphin, graduated from there, graduated from Penn State main campus. But you were a speechwriter. You're a writer. You're a wordsmith, right, John?
Yeah, I like to consider myself. I was lucky in that I joined the campaign of President Bush, the older one,
Herbert Walker.
in 1988, and he won. And it was the last winning campaign I ever worked on.
Wow.
But that got me into the White House for 3 years, and then I joined the Bush campaign in '92, and he lost that time. And then I became a waiter at Pizzeria Uno's. That's how that works in Washington.
That's what happens with writers, right? Or guys that are politically attached politically to
The
somebody.
Republicans went out, the Democrats came
Right.
in, and I was going, would you like some fresh pepper on that?
Right. rather than a fresh speech.
Exactly. So then I moved to California, worked on campaigns out there.
We're not going to let you move forward that quickly or that easily, John. You just told us that you worked in the White House or out of the White House.
Well, twice actually, for Papa Bush and son Bush. Yes.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about what it's like working in the White House?
Well, the first time around was interesting because I worked night shift. I would come in at 11 o'clock at night. I would get the Washington Post. I'd walk in. I'd summarize all the news for the president. I was the internet before the internet.
Okay.
I would summarize the overnight news and give it to the president at 6 a.m. Sometimes I'd catch his wife, Barbara, in her bathrobe because it was that early. She'd be walking her dog. And that's what I did for 3 years. We switched off night shift, day shift, and evening shift. But I was the news summary guy. And then the second time I went in was because of 9/11. I was Governor Ridge's speechwriter in Harrisburg. And then 9/11 happened. And he brought me down to D.C. to work on Homeland Security, which I did. And then I worked for the Department of Education and then Housing and Urban Development during the housing crash, which was a little bit of fun there, and then back to education. So, yeah, it's been quite a journey, and I also have to say that I didn't write any speeches for Bush.
Okay.
But I did write jokes from time to time. His people knew that I was a stand-up, and they would ask me to write jokes for certain events, like when Peyton Manning came to the White House, or when he went on Deal or No Deal, the game show, and that's what I did.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I thought, based on what Joe had said, that you had written for the president. So my question was related to that. But so you deflated that question. I can't ask it. You didn't do it.
Well, I wrote for Secretary Margaret Spellings, Secretary Alfonso Jackson, Secretary Rod Page, Secretary Tom Ridge, and I wrote jokes for President Bush.
Okay. So when these people want a speech written, how much interaction do you have from them? As far as, do they give you generally what they want to focus on, or how does that work? The interplay between the writer and the politician.
Well, when I worked for Governor Tom Ridge, which was my first real 100% speechwriting job.
Okay.
He interviewed me twice in California where I was living. And we had a pretty good meeting of the minds. And they were impressed that I grew up in Harrisburg. You know, they were looking for a speechwriter. And I said, hey, I grew up in Harrisburg, this and that. And then I remember the first time, the first assignment I had was the budget address, you know, the annual budget address.
Right.
It was like 4,000 words long. That was my first assignment. But prior to that, I did have another assignment. He was speaking to this conservative group in North Carolina, and I went down to his office and I suggested, this is what I want to say. And he looked at me and goes, this is exactly right. This is good. Go ahead and do it. So from then on, you know, we had a good meeting of the minds. And that's what it takes. You just got to step into your principal's mind, and he's got to trust you with whatever kind of event he's doing.
So Tom Ridge, he seemed like kind of a salt of the earth man. Was he?
He was
great a guy as everybody as he came across.
He was great. I mean, he served in Vietnam. All the troops liked him. He was a congressman from Erie when he was younger. Nobody ever really had a bad word to say about him. He used to when he ran for office, he said he's the congressman that nobody's heard of from the place that nobody's been to.
That's good.
Hey,
Yeah,
I was to the area. I've been there.
You should have written that one, John.
Well, I was in California,
right?
But it was great working for him. I used to drive him a little bit crazy because I would sometimes finish my speech with like 3 hours to spare. You know,
Wow.
we'd walk into the radio studio for his monthly address, and he'd go, "I'd like to see the script you wrote, John." And but it was great. One time, I do remember this. He had a Catholic education from some very stern grammarians at the school that he went to.
Mm-hmm.
And they taught him never to end a sentence in a preposition. Well,
Oh.
I wrote right after 9/11, he did a speech in front of the National Firefighters Association. And I came up with what I thought was a good turn of phrase. And I ended a sentence with a preposition. And he's reading it. And I'm at home changing my clothes to go to the movies on a Saturday night. I'm watching this on C-SPAN. And he comes to the point in the speech, and then he looks up and he goes, "Forgive me, sister. I ended a speech. I ended a sentence with a preposition. Don't worry, the writer's going to be fired tomorrow."
Oh boy!
Everybody laughed, and I'm sitting there like hamada, 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 you know. But that was his joke at my expense.
Okay, so when I first interrupted you about 10 minutes ago, I think you were taking us out to California.
Yeah.
And I think it may have been the Ariana Huffington job. Am I correct or no?
Well, I first worked in California for a school choice campaign, a school voucher campaign. We lost. Then I worked for the Assembly Minority Leader named Pat Nolan. He got indicted and thrown into jail. Then I worked for Mike Huffington for Senate. He lost and came out of the closet and moved to Canada and divorced his wife, Ariana. And then I worked for the Center for the Study of Popular Culture, which was a conservative think tank. And then I worked for Governor Pete Wilson. He was termed out. And then I finagled my way to working for Ariana Huffington, who was Mike Huffington's wife. And she was a writer. She wrote 2 columns a week. I helped her write a book that year. She kind of went on a journey from conservative to liberal while I was there. But, you know, I agreed with her on a lot of issues. She was big on saying that we're taking too many drugs as a society. And she believed in school choice and that sort of thing. So it was fun to work for her, but I am glad that Tom Ridge hired me at the end of that year.
Is she bright? She comes across as a very bright woman, Ariana.
Very
Huffington.
smart, very demanding.
Yeah.
You know, she's the kind that we used to work in her house, and we had this little cubby hole above her study where we would work in, and she would come up the stairs sometimes and say things like, "John, I am not a micromanager, but why do you have your inbox all the way over here where you can't reach it?" You know.
So she was the micromanager then.
She was
right?
a micromanager, yes. So it was a lot of hard work. You know, I was 33 years old or whatever, but I learned a lot. So that was good.
So kind of, I'm not asking you to stop talking about writing and speech writing, but kind of let the stand-up comedy work its way into the story here. When did that all start?
Let me ask if Bill had a question. I saw him.
I did.
Okay.
I'm not real big on pop culture. So Ms. Huffington, is this Huffington Post? Is that
Yes.
where we're?
Yes,
Okay.
she started
Right.
the Huffington Post,
Okay.
and which I've written about 30 pieces for the Huffington Post, humor pieces
That's impressive.
over the years. You can type my name in and see, you know, Huffington Post, John Herr, and you can see certain things pop up.
Okay. Thank you.
So
I'm not
when
real
did
good
you-
at that stuff.
You're 33 years old now in the story part. When did you first get involved or desire to get involved in stand-up comedy? Because That's kind of a different breed of human being that does stand-up comedy.
Well, as you know, Joe, I was a class clown at
You were?
Southside Elementary.
That doesn't always equate over to being a good stand-up comedian, though, John.
No, but in fact, I got paddled as late as 8th grade in a public school by Mrs. Woy, the cheerleading coach, an algebra teacher. She paddled me for a dumb joke, sent me right out in the hall. And people couldn't imagine it today, teachers paddling their kids, but they did. But anyway, so I was a class clown. Then, when I was 21, I moved to DC. I met a guy who is a stand-up comic, and we did some open mics, things like that. And then I moved to California. I did some open mics out there. And then I came back to DC, and one day I said, I'm not satisfied with just doing open mics. I want to become a comedian for real. So I said to myself, I'm going to take 2 years to write material. 2 years. 2003. And I did. I wrote material. By the end of the 2 years, I had 8 minutes of material. July 3rd, 2005, I went on stage for good, and I haven't looked back. So we're about a couple of weeks away from my 20th anniversary.
Are you paying your bills through stand-up comedy?
No, I'm gaining bills like gas money. I'm collecting bills.
Okay.
But I'm trying to break through. Right now, my set is as good as it's ever been. I've got 40 minutes of material in my pocket. I can do 3 10-minute sets in a row without repeating a joke, and they're all going to be good. I have a good set. Now I just have to make people with money and stage needs realize that they're better off paying me than not paying me. That's
right.
the trick.
You've shared some of your jokes with me over the last handful of years, and a couple of them were as good as anyone that I'm a fan of stand-up comedy, and I like to watch professional stand-up comedians, and some of them are as good as any ones that I hear on HBO specials or whatnot. Now, does a stand-up comedy joke? They're not all jokes. A lot of them are observations, and does that kind of work on a podcast level? Would you be able to? Would you feel comfortable with throwing a couple our way, John? Herricane?
Well, there's a school of thought that you don't want to repeat your act in a conversational situation.
That's why I asked. Okay.
And in fact, there's a term for it called spritzing. That's when a stand-up comic uses his material on other comics in a conversational situation.
Okay.
And you can usually tell, that, that's a joke in your set. Why are you, come on, we're talking about sports here. What's going on?
Right.
But having said that, I will gladly share jokes in a podcast or, as they come up, or maybe, if I'm on the Dave Latour's interview show, he starts talking about the Steelers, I'll have some jokes about Aaron Rodgers signing or what have you. And when they come about in the natural course of the conversation, I'm trying to be pretty quick.
Right. So where are you? You still doing shows in DC and New York City, right?
Well, last weekend I did 2 shows in New York City. One at a place called Room 52 off of 55th Street, and one at a place called the Grizzly Pear, which is a kind of famous comedy club. And they're in Midtown as well. I did that Monday night and drove back Tuesday, and I'm probably going to drive down to Washington, D.C. this weekend for a couple of shows as well.
Okay. And are you still writing at all outside of writing jokes?
I'm working on a speech right now for the president of the Pennsylvania Association of Community Banks, who's a friend of mine.
All right.
So I am, and I wrote a speech for the head of Hershey Park's entertainment division a few months back. And so, freelance is helping to pay the bills.
Good.
Otherwise, I'm working at Hack as a tutor. So that's paying some bills too.
Okay, so how do our viewers get to see you? Where do you have a website or a schedule somewhere?
I've put in a couple of dollars to build up my Instagram site, which I'm pretty proud of. It's called Herricane Comedy. That's one word.
Herr.
Exactly.
Herricane. John Herr.
Yeah.
Herricane.
If I can change my name here, I'll write it down there. There we go. Herricane Comedy. So that's my Instagram site, Herricane Comedy.
Okay. Boy, Bill, he knows how to navigate his way through this better than we do.
Yeah, you're amazing, John.
Yeah.
Some of my old stand-up sets. You'll see what I call fat milestones, which are my little ways to tell how you're getting fat. They're little videos. You'll see some other satire things that I write on Facebook, all kinds of stuff. And then, on YouTube, I got some shows like Laughs on the Harbor, which I did in 2010, one of my best shows ever. But start with Instagram, Herricane Comedy. That's
Okay.
the best place to start.
And John, how do I know if I'm getting fat?
Well, we filmed one bit with Joe. It wasn't a fat milestone, but it was another bit where we made a pun, and I won't go into it, but he was a good actor.
I think I was eating cereal without milk or something like that, right?
It was it was a joke about a guy, a powdered cereal magnet.
That's right, yeah.
Powdered milk magnet. But anyway, all right, some ways you can tell how fat you're getting without looking in the mirror or going on a scale. Number 1, do you sit down to vacuum?
That's great.
I saw you doing that.
That's really good.
Number two, at Hooters, do you stare at the tater tots? Number 3, when the MC tells you to put your hands together, can you? Number 4, has Little Debbie friended you on Facebook? Number 5, have you ever eaten an edible arrangement at the store? Number 6, I'll just do a few more.
Okay.
Number 6, have you ever followed a Zamboni with a snow cone cup?
That's good.
Number 7, this is conceptual. When you're naked, can people tell? Number 8, do you eat pot brownies for the brownie? And finally, have you ever sung She's My Cherry Pie to an actual cherry pie?
Very good, John.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, they were good, man. I kind of got tears in my eyes here, John. That was some good stuff.
I don't know what kind of shake you were drinking. That looked
no. That's that's coffee. Modern imprint. Yeah. So, John Herricane, thank you. Anything else you want to plug or anything else you want to tell us about before we let you go?
Well, I got some shows. I got a show in West Virginia. I got a show down in Charles County, Maryland coming up. I got the show in DC this weekend, and once in a while I'll do the Thursday night open mic at Boomerang in New Cumberland.
Okay.
So Boomerang. Okay. Boomerang.
Night and you can test your material.
Well, maybe Joe and I can put together a bus trip, fill the bus, and go down to West Virginia.
Well, I'll give you the date. I would love to see you.
I could promise that I would fill up my Lexus with you and me, Bill. I don't know about a bus, but yeah.
Well, I think big, Joe.
Bill, you let me know and we'll go together.
Okay.
All right, John. Thank you very much, John Herricane. Stick with us here while we thank our sponsors one more time. The American Legion, Post 272, where John's father years ago was president for a period of time. Rickabaz Electric, Team PA, AAU basketball, and Be a Hero, Hire a Hero. Once again, I'm going to kind of cross podcast advertise here. this coming Tuesday, the 24th, we are going to meet 9 members of the Pennsylvania High School Softball State Champion Central Dauphin team. And these are some awesome young ladies, great softball players, great representatives of our area. And I know some of them. I broadcasted a lot of their games, but we're going to get to know a different side of them, off the baseball field, and learn about the student part of the student athletes and where they might be heading to college. So I'm looking forward to that one. John, thank you.
Yeah,
Bill
thanks.
Bostic, my partner, we really appreciate it. And if anybody out there, the last thing I'm going to say, if you have any ideas about who we could bring in here to interview, to be part of our show, please let us know. And we mean that sincerely. We've already brought people in that others have recommended, and that's kind of our way of being part of the community and not just part of what Bill and I come up with on our own. So, John, thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
a great guest, and Bill, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take
Have
care.
a great
everybody.
evening. See ya.